You're about to see 10 aircraft that break the normal rules of what a plane is supposed to look like, sound like, or even be able to do. Machines so strange that pilots who actually flew them still get asked if the photos were faked. Some were built to disappear from radar completely. If stories like this get you as fired up as they get me, hit subscribe, because this channel exists for exactly this kind of aviation madness. Let's start with the one that looks like it crash-landed out of a stealth bomber's nightmares. Number 10. Northrop Tacit Blue. This thing looks like someone welded a shoebox onto a bathtub and told it to fly, and somehow it worked. The Tacit Blue was built in total secrecy in the late 1970s, and its job was almost impossible. Fly close to the front lines, watch the battlefield in real time, and stay invisible to enemy radar the entire time. Its curved fuselage earned it the nickname the Whale. But that shape wasn't for looks. Every curve was mathematically engineered to scatter radar waves in directions that made the plane nearly impossible to detect. It flew on two small, underpowered engines and was so aerodynamically unstable that without a computer correcting its flight path dozens of times per second, it would have literally tumbled out of the sky. Pilots described it as flying a brick with opinions. The program was so classified that its existence wasn't even acknowledged by the US government until 1996, nearly 2 decades after it first took to the air. What the Tacit Blue proved, though, changed everything. The low observable technology tested on this ugly little jet became the foundation for stealth aircraft that followed, including the B-2 bomber you'll recognize instantly. One prototype was built. It flew nearly 150 times, and almost nobody on Earth knew it existed while it was happening. Number 9. North American XB-70 Valkyrie. Picture a bomber the size of an airliner, cruising at 3 times the speed of sound, at 70,000 feet, with wingtips that physically folded downward mid-flight. That's not science fiction, that's the XB-70 Valkyrie, and it remains one of the most insane aircraft ever built by human hands. Designed in the late 1950s as a nuclear bomber meant to outrun any Soviet interceptor, the Valkyrie was built almost entirely from stainless steel honeycomb panels and titanium, because at Mach 3, the air friction alone would melt a conventional aircraft skin. Those drooping wingtips weren't a gimmick. They were angled downward during high-speed flight to trap the aircraft's own shockwave underneath the wings, generating extra lift for free, a phenomenon engineers call compression lift. 6 engines, 171 feet of stainless steel monster. It could outrun almost anything in the sky in 1964, and in many ways, it still could today. But the program was doomed before it ever reached full production. Intercontinental ballistic missiles made high-altitude bombers obsolete almost overnight, and only 2 Valkyries were ever built. One of them was destroyed in a mid-air collision in 1966, caught on film during a photo shoot that went catastrophically wrong. The second sits today in a museum in Ohio, the last physical proof that this machine wasn't a fever dream. Number 8. Convair F2Y Sea Dart. Now picture a supersonic fighter jet that takes off from the ocean, not from a runway, not from a carrier deck, from open water, riding on skis. The Sea Dart is, without exaggeration, one of the strangest ideas the US Navy ever greenlit. In the 1950s, the Navy wanted a fighter that could operate without needing a runway or a carrier at all. Just drop it in the water near a fleet, and it launches straight off the surface using retractable hydro skis, the same basic principle as water skis, just bolted onto a jet fighter. It actually flew. It actually broke the speed of sound, becoming the only seaplane in history to do so. But taking off from water at high speed is an entirely different physics problem than taking off from concrete, and the Sea Dart fought the Navy's engineers every step of the way. The skis caused violent vibrations during takeoff runs, and on one test flight in 1954, those vibrations became so severe that the aircraft broke apart mid-air in front of a crowd of spectators and dignitaries, killing the test pilot. The program was quietly shut down not long after. Only a handful of Sea Darts were ever built, and one still sits, half forgotten, outside a museum in San Diego. A supersonic jet that was supposed to make runways obsolete, undone by the very water it was designed to use. Number 7. NASA X-59 QueSST. This is the plane trying to solve a problem that grounded supersonic passenger travel for over 50 years. When the Concorde flew faster than sound, it created a sonic boom so violent that it rattled windows and set off car alarms for miles, which is exactly why supersonic flight over land was banned across most of the world. NASA's answer is the X-59, an aircraft with one of the strangest design goals ever attempted: fly faster than sound, without without producing a boom loud enough for anyone below to notice. Instead of a shockwave slamming together into one thunderous crack, the X-59's needle-thin 38-foot nose is engineered to break that shockwave apart into smaller, softer pressure waves that reach the ground as something closer to a distant car door closing, not an explosion. The cockpit doesn't even have a front windshield. The nose is too long and too narrow for a pilot to see over, so NASA built an external vision system instead. Essentially, a camera and screen replacing direct sight out the front of the aircraft. If this technology works the way NASA's engineers believe it will, it could bring back supersonic passenger travel over land for the first time since Concorde was retired in 2003. This isn't a museum piece or a Cold War relic. The X-59 is flying test missions right now, and what happens with it could reshape commercial aviation within our lifetime. Number 6. Scaled Composites Model 281 Proteus. At first glance, the Proteus looks like a toy someone assembled from spare airplane parts that didn't match. A long, thin canard wing up front, a completely separate main wing further back, and a fuselage so narrow it barely looks capable of carrying a pilot. But that mismatched look is exactly the point. The Proteus was designed by legendary aircraft engineer Burt Rutan to be modular, capable of carrying wildly different payloads depending on the mission, from atmospheric research sensors to telecommunications relay equipment, essentially acting as a low-orbit satellite that never leaves the atmosphere. It can loiter above 60,000 feet for over a day at a time, far above commercial air traffic, watching weather systems form or relaying signals across huge distances. Its unusual twin-wing configuration wasn't chosen for looks. It lets the aircraft carry heavy, bulky equipment while still remaining efficient enough to stay aloft for extraordinarily long missions. NASA has used it for atmospheric research. The FAA even tested it as a potential stand-in for a communications satellite. It's one of the strangest looking aircraft ever to receive an official US type certificate, and it still flies today, decades after most people assumed it was some kind of experimental one-off that would never leave the hangar. Number 5. Dassault nEUROn. This is a fighter-sized aircraft with no pilot, no visible seams, no rivets, no antennas, nothing. The nEUROn is a European stealth drone demonstrator built jointly by France, Italy, Sweden, Switzerland, Spain, and Greece, and its entire purpose is to prove that a nation without America's defense budget can still build a genuinely stealth combat aircraft. Look closely at photos of it, and you'll notice something unsettling. You can't find the seams. Conventional aircraft are covered in access panels, rivet lines, and small gaps that all reflect radar. The nEUROn skin is built using bonding techniques that eliminate almost all of that, creating a surface so smooth it looks computer-generated even in real photographs. It has an internal weapons bay, because anything mounted externally would give away its radar signature instantly. It flies itself using autonomous systems designed to eventually let it operate in coordinated swarms alongside manned fighter jets, sharing data, and even taking targeting cues in real time. First flown in 2012, the nEUROn was never meant for mass production. It exists purely to prove that this level of stealth and autonomy is achievable outside of an American defense contractor's hangar, and it flew successfully in joint military exercises with actual fighter squadrons, weaving through live combat drills as if it belonged there. For a program most people have never heard of, it quietly rewrote what a mid-sized nation could build. Number 4. Sukhoi S-70 Okhotnik. Now picture that same idea, except this version is the size of a fighter jet, was built by Russia, and has actually dropped live weapons in combat conditions. The Okhotnik, which translates to hunter, is a flying wing stealth drone weighing in at around 44,000 pounds. That's roughly the size of a small airliner, except there's no cockpit, no pilot, nothing. It's designed to fly alongside Russia's Su-57 stealth fighter, acting as a forward scout and weapons platform that can absorb risk a manned jet wouldn't take, feeding targeting data back to the fighter flying safely behind it. Its flying wing shape, similar in concept to the American B-2 bomber, was chosen specifically to minimize its radar signature from every angle, and it's believed to be capable of speeds approaching Mach 1 despite its enormous size and unconventional shape. Western intelligence agencies have tracked it operating in contested airspace, and it's reportedly been used in real combat operations, making it one of the only aircraft on this list that isn't just a demonstrator or a test article. It's an operational weapon. Details on its full capabilities remain deliberately murky, which is exactly how programs like this are designed to stay. What's confirmed is unsettling enough on its own. A tailless, engine-in-the-back, radar-evading drone the size of a regional jet, flying combat missions with no one inside it. Number 3. NASA Perlan 2. This next one has no engine at all, and it has flown higher than most fighter jets could ever dream of reaching. The Perlan 2 is a glider, a fully pressurized, engineless aircraft that relies entirely on a rare and highly specific atmospheric phenomenon called stratospheric mountain waves, essentially massive, invisible rivers of rising air that form near certain mountain ranges only when weather conditions align almost perfectly. Pilots ride these waves upward, trading patience for altitude, climbing in complete silence with no engine noise at all, nothing but the sound of air over the wings. In 2018, flying over the Andes Mountains in Argentina, the Perlan 2 reached an altitude of over 76,000 feet. That's higher than the U-2 spy plane ever officially flew, higher than nearly every fighter jet in active service, and deep into territory where the sky itself starts turning a deep violet black because there's so little atmosphere left to scatter sunlight. The cabin is pressurized much like a spacecraft because at that altitude, unprotected exposure would kill an unprepared pilot within seconds. There's no engine to fail up there, but there's also no engine to bail you out if the wave collapses unexpectedly. Pilots are entirely at the mercy of physics and weather patterns that atmospheric scientists still don't fully understand even today. NASA backs this project specifically because the data gathered at those extreme altitudes helps researchers understand atmospheric conditions similar to what an aircraft might one day encounter flying through the thin, wave-driven atmosphere of Mars. Number 2. Flying V. Every airliner you've ever boarded looks basically the same, a long tube with two wings bolted to the sides. The Flying V throws that entire design philosophy out the window completely. Developed by Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands with financial and engineering backing from KLM, one of the world's major airlines, the Flying V eliminates the traditional cylindrical fuselage entirely. Instead, passengers, cargo, and fuel are all housed directly inside two enormous V-shaped wing structures that merge together at the center of the aircraft, creating something that looks far less like a commercial airliner and more like a stealth bomber that got dressed up in an airline's paint job. That shape isn't just an aesthetic choice. A V-shaped design like this cuts aerodynamic drag dramatically compared to a conventional tube and wing airliner, and early engineering estimates suggest it could reduce total fuel consumption by something in the range of 20%, all while carrying a passenger load similar to an Airbus A350. A scaled remote-controlled prototype has already completed successful test flights in the Netherlands, proving the unconventional shape can genuinely fly in a stable, controllable way, not just look impressive rendered in a design studio. If a full-scale, passenger-carrying version ever enters commercial service, the entire experience of air travel could shift in ways most flyers have never considered. Window seats might not even exist the way they do today, because in a wing-shaped cabin like this, almost nobody ends up sitting anywhere close to the outer edge. Number 1. VSS Unity. And this is the aircraft that isn't really an aircraft at all. It's a spaceship that happens to take off like a plane. VSS Unity is Virgin Galactic's suborbital space plane, and its journey toward space begins in about the strangest way imaginable. It doesn't launch from a pad, it gets carried up to roughly 45,000 feet underneath a massive twin fuselage mothership called VMS Eve, riding passively the entire way up like cargo. Once released mid-air, Unity ignites its own rocket motor and accelerates almost straight upward, pushing past Mach 3 and punching through the edge of space, crossing the internationally recognized boundary of 80 kilometers in altitude within minutes. For a few brief minutes, the passengers strapped inside experience genuine weightlessness, unbuckling to float freely inside the cabin while looking down at the visible curvature of the Earth set against the pitch black of space itself. Then Unity does something no conventional aircraft or spacecraft has ever done. Its entire tail section physically rotates upward into what's called feather mode, turning the whole vehicle into something resembling an oversized badminton shuttlecock, dramatically increasing drag so it can fall back through the thickening atmosphere safely without needing a heat shield or a parachute of any kind. Once it's slowed sufficiently, the tail folds back down into its normal flight position, and Unity simply glides the rest of the way home, landing on a conventional runway exactly like an ordinary airplane would. It's already flown paying customers, dedicated researchers, temperatures, and even its own founder to the edge of space and back, blurring the line between commercial aviation and genuine spaceflight in a way no other vehicle on this entire list even comes close to attempting. 10 aircraft. 10 completely different reasons engineers looked at the established rules of flight and decided to break them anyway. Some of these never made it past a handful of experimental test flights, and some are flying real missions right now, today, somewhere above your head as you're watching this. If you want more deep dives into aviation's strangest machines, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.